Welcome to the Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. My name is Dr. Adriana Popescu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and leader in the field of mental health, energy psychology, addiction, trauma, and empowerment. In this podcast, we will be exploring mental health from a variety of perspectives, from the spiritual to the shamanic and beyond. What if mental illness isn't everything we think it is? What if everything we see as a pathology is actually a possibility? What else is possible with mental health?
Hi, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you with another episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. I'm happy to have with me as my guest, Candace Plattor. She is an addictions therapist in private practice, where she specializes in working with the family and other loved ones of people who are struggling with addiction. As a former addict with more than 38 years clean and sober, Candace has learned that overcoming addiction is a family condition. Everyone in the family is affected by addiction, and everyone needs to heal. The results Candace achieves have been astounding. Addicts stop using, and families regain their lives from the ravages of addiction. Not only has her success led to a waiting list of clients, but she is a sought-after leader in the field of addictions. Welcome, Candace.
Thank you. Hello. Hi, everyone.
So glad to have you here with us today. I'm going to start off with the question I always ask of our guests, which is to tell us a little bit about yourself, your story, and how you came to be doing this incredible work that you're doing today.
Okay. Well, I think this part of my story started close to 50 years ago when I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And for people who don't know Crohn's, it's more people have it, unfortunately, now. It used to be that I'd talk about it and nobody would know what I was talking about. But it's an inflammatory bowel disease, and it's a hard one to deal with. And I've had it for longer than 50 years now. When I was diagnosed with it in the early 70s, um, I the doctors really didn't know what to do for me. It was a new disease on the block, and so they, I guess they really tried to help me, but they wound up hurting me. They gave me medications that, although I didn't know it at the time, were addictive, like Valium and codeine and morphine. And I was glad for those drugs because it helped with the pain, but later in life, it really became a problem. And my body, just like anybody's body, became addicted to them. So I wound up with quite an addiction on my hands. And in 38 years ago, yep, I made a decision after about 15 years of being addicted and being depressed and being suicidal, and life was not fun for me being addicted to these drugs. I decided to get some help, and I started I started seeing a counselor, and I started going to 12-step programs, which were at the time the only option available to me. And I don't go to them anymore, but they saved my life at the time. Absolutely. And I'm very grateful for them. I don't go to them anymore because they espouse a theory that I don't agree with. And after all these years of doing this work with people, I don't see addiction as a disease. And the 12-step programs see it as a disease, and that you're powerless over the disease. And, pretty much once you're an addict, you're always an addict, So I went to them for about 10 years, and um, I started to really begin to listen to the readings that they would do in the beginning. This happens in every 12-step meeting. There are readings that they do. And those readings were, you're powerless, it's a disease. And I'm thinking, I have 10 years clean. I'm not powerless over this, and I have a disease that I can't get rid of. I have Crohn's disease, and try as I might, and boy, have I tried, I still have it, you know. But with addiction, it's a different thing. With addiction, when you stop using the addiction, it's gone. I mean, I'm simplifying it a lot, but really that's how it works. If you don't use it, if you don't use it, whatever it is, the behavior, the substance, whatever it is, and you make a decision to live a different kind of life, then addiction is gone from your life.
Definitely a different way of looking at it. I think there are folks out there who would say, it's they use that metaphor of the sleeping tiger, right? That your addiction's like a sleeping tiger inside of you, and at any point that, tiger might.
Well, I think that's true. I think that's true, but you have to make a decision about what you're going to do about that. I mean, I was an addict who liked getting high. I liked smoking pot. I liked getting, taking these medications and getting high from them. I liked that. But then I made a decision that I wasn't going to do that anymore. And that's really what it takes. It's getting to the point of making that decision, because your life is pretty much unmanageable until you do.
Right. Well, that I think is an interesting segue to the work that you do with families of people with addictions, because I think a lot of times, um, we've all seen like the intervention shows and things like that. A lot of times the families feel that if they can kind of coerce someone into getting treatment, that the person will then, get sober or abstain from whatever the addictive behavior is, and then be fixed, right? And we know that it doesn't quite work like that. So what are your thoughts there?
Well, I was talking to a client about that this morning, about an addiction. She was thinking of maybe doing an addiction with her daughter who's addicted. You know, every once in a while, an intervention works. Most of the time, and when it does work, it's usually because the addict has gotten to the point of, I see that my life is unmanageable and I need to make a different decision. Usually they're close to that point. Most of the time, interventions don't work very well. They kind of push the addict back to the wall, you know, and the addict becomes very defensive. And it's most people, when they think about interventions, they think about the TV show, as you were saying, um, and most of the addicts on the TV show go to treatment. Most of them get on the plane. You watch them get on the plane, they go to treatment. What they don't tell you most of the time is that 2 days after that, or 4 days after that, or maybe a week after that, they leave treatment. And, that's because they're still in that place of, I'm not like these people. I don't need this. I can do it myself. They're not really close to wanting help at that point. So the intervention, most of the time, doesn't work. It's not a good way to deal with addiction, I don't think. But a lot of families want something that will fix their addict, like you say. To your point, if you fix my addict, then everything will be fine. because my life was fine before and it will be fine after. And I challenge that as an addiction therapist. I challenge that. And the magic question is, what would your life be like if you didn't have this problem? Most people say, oh, it'd be great, it would be wonderful. But the really courageous, honest people say to me, I'm not sure what I would do if I didn't have this problem, because my whole life is involved in this problem.
Yes.
And I'm too involved in this problem.
Yes.
And that's where we start with counseling. That's where we start.
Well, I mean, there's 1,001 things I want to reply to and everything you've said. But one of them is, so, as someone who works in addiction treatment, I've worked in programs, and one obviously private practice as well. But in programs, one of the things that we often see with our clients is that, let's say the person willingly, admits they have an issue, they're internally motivated to make the change versus that external motivation where they're feeling
Yay.
coerced, right,
Yeah.
into doing something. But often what we see is, because they have been labeled the identified patient, the IP, right?
Yeah.
They are the problem in the family. And that if they just get better, everything in the family will get better. And then they come out of treatment and they go back and they have changed and they've made changes and maybe they're in a healthier place. But the family then is not comfortable with that. It's almost like they're trying to like push the addict's buttons again to try to get back into this IP role, into this like familiar dynamic that they're used to having, where the IP is the problem. I'm not the problem. I don't have anything to do with this. They're the ones with the addiction. You know what I mean? I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
It's like you read in my bio. Everybody in the family is affected and everybody needs to heal. Everybody has been affected by this.
Right.
And, so many families don't know what to do. They're doing what they believe will help the situation. Often it doesn't.
Yes.
And
Yes.
we call those behaviors enabling behaviors. Enabling behaviors, and there's a lot of ways to enable. It isn't just about giving money, but um, enabling behaviors keep addiction going. It just keeps it going. Helping behaviors, the difference between enabling and helping behaviors helps it stop. And so the families need to learn how to present themselves to the addict who has gotten treatment, or even who hasn't gotten treatment, with healthy boundaries, with some self-respect. They need to be able to deal with the situation differently, and they need to learn how to do that at the same time that the addict needs to recover. So everybody needs to be recovering. It isn't a question of who's done worse, who the real problem is. Everybody has a part in this.
Right. It's a
And
systemic issue, not an
yeah,
individual issue.
that's right. And the problem is that in a family, the addict is able to use drugs or behaviors that keep them addicted. So they're high on the substances, they're high on the behaviors. They don't have to really pay attention to what they're doing. They're self-absorbed. They don't really care. I have a client whose son called her last night at 2:30 in the morning. When does that become okay? Right? So the addict is doing those kinds of things, but most of the time the rest of the people in the family have to actually feel stuff, have to actually be there and not be stoned and feel things, but everybody's got their own thing that they need to do to be able to recover.
Right. So, can we go even further with that, Candace? And can you give us some examples of what are enabling not helpful behaviors versus what are genuinely helpful behaviors that family members can be doing for their loved one with addiction?
Yeah. So, of course, the first one that comes to mind is always money. The addict says, I need 20 bucks. You know where the 20 bucks is going to go? Or I need $5,000 because people are chasing me and they're going to kill me. That's always a really like a nice way to say to your family, you got to give me this money. And you may not want to, and there may be boundaries that need to be set about that. But another one is when, like, if an addict is living in the family home, which often happens now because, addicts don't have any money. Addicts spend all their money on either drugs or alcohol or gambling, or, they don't have any money. So they come back home and the family says, okay, you can live here. So they're still getting high, and they're you know they're up all night, they sleep all day, they're not doing anything, they're not contributing anything to the household. Somebody else is cooking the meals that they get to eat, somebody else is buying groceries that they get to eat, you know so there has to be some boundaries set around that. If you're going to live in our home, you know the okay, I'll go back to that. I'm getting another thought in my mind. I'll go back to that. But to be able to say to an addict, if you're going to live here, then we need you to be up every morning by 7:30. We need you to be out by 8:30, and you're either at a program, or you're taking classes, or you have a job. But that's how it's going to be if you live here. You're welcome to leave if you want to, but if you live here with us, you're going to be doing what we're doing, right? And maybe you ask the addict to cook 2 dinners a week for the family. And if you don't know how to cook anything, let me know, and we'll cook some things together, and I'll show you how to cook. It's a good thing. It's a good kind of activity to do with somebody. Maybe the addict hasn't done their laundry in a long time. The mom has been doing the laundry. Somebody's been doing the laundry. And so you say to the addict, I'm not going to be doing your laundry anymore. I love you. And because I love you, I'm not going to do your laundry anymore. I'm going to teach you how to do laundry. This is how you put it in the machine. This is how much soap you use. This is the button to push. And we expect that you will do your laundry at least once a week. So that more is expected of the addict. And they're not just able to sit around and sleep all day and be up all night while other people are trying to sleep. So those are some of the ways that families enable an addict, is to do everything for them. Enabling means that I'm doing for the addict what the addict can and should be doing for himself.
Right, right. Well, I can easily see how some people listening or watching this might think, okay, but what if, and maybe they've tried that, right? But then the addict refuses, right? They say, no, I don't want to do that, or I will do that. And then they don't.
Then you don't live here, honey. We love you. This is the message. We love you. We love you so much that it's breaking our hearts to see you in a life of addiction. We don't want to watch this anymore. We don't want to see you in this life anymore. And that's because we love you. We are not willing to support you in addiction anymore. When you decide that you want some help, we'll be here in whatever ways we can be. We'll help you with that in whatever ways we can. But we are not going to support your addiction anymore. And that's because we love you, not because we don't.
And I think, and I love that. And I think that is the healthy way to do it. I think some family members struggle around that. I think they might see that as like a tough love type thing, and maybe not feel that they're strong enough to do that, or especially, thinking, well, if I let my loved one become homeless, they're going to sell their body, they're going to get into dangerous situations, they're going to maybe get arrested or end up in jail or something. I think there's people who are not willing to let that consequence happen to their loved one.
We are not allowing an addict to become homeless. Here's a home for you to live in. But if you live in this home, this is what we expect of you. And tough love has had a bad rap. Tough love is love, and sometimes it's the best kind of love. And it's there's a self-respect in this as well that families need to feel. The families um, have been giving of themselves, of trying not to make the addict angry, trying to make everything be okay with the addict. Like, really? And how has that helped? If that's helping, then go ahead and do it. But if it's not helping, come get some help for yourself and learn how to do these things, because it's better for the addict and it's better for you.
Do you think that some of the family members struggle to set these kinds of boundaries because they feel guilty? Maybe they feel
Yes,
like it must be my fault. I wasn't a good enough parent. Maybe I wasn't
right.
around when they were little, or something
That's
happened.
exactly that's exactly how most families feel. But addiction is a choice more than it's anything else. And yes, there's brain involvement in addiction, there's all that stuff. That doesn't that doesn't make it not be a choice.
Hmm.
So if the addict is going to be in a life of addiction, they are making a choice to do that. And you, as the family member, want to make that choice harder for the addict, not easier.
It's tough. I think it's really,
It's tough. It's the
yeah,
most brutal situation I think a family can go through. But 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 that's the reality of it. Let's deal with the reality of it. The reality is that it's brutal. The reality is that we have to learn how to help an addict get better. We have to get better. The whole thing needs to change,
yeah,
because what's happening right now in most families that have addiction in it, it's not working.
yeah.
And this is why we haven't been able to get a grasp on addiction, because we have families that enable, we have businesses that enable, we have governments that enable.
Insurance companies that won't pay for treatment that enable all the things. Yeah. Yes, it's a big hairy monster. The
And it
whole
doesn't
thing,
have to be. It doesn't
and
have
it
to
doesn't
be.
have to be. Yeah. um I come across this one a lot in treatment, where we get families that, we briefly alluded to this before, but sometimes we get the families that are sort of on the other end of the pendulum, like, well, it's not my fault they're doing that, And I don't need, we might suggest, hey, it probably would be really helpful for you to get some support for yourself and some counseling or Al-Anon or whatever, some sort of support group. And, there often is this defensiveness that I'm not the problem, they're the problem. How do you deal with that dynamic when it shows up in family?
I grew up in a family like that. I grew up with a narcissistic mother, a pretty self-absorbed father, and they were just not interested in the fact that I had an addiction. And that didn't help either.
Mm-hmm.
But I was basically on my own. And I knew that if I was going to live through this, I was going to have to find a way to get the help that I needed. And now, I do see that in families. I see that far more than I like to see it. They don't come to me. Those families don't come to me. And, I've gotten to the point working in this, I've been doing this work for over 30 years now. I want to work with the families that want to work with me
Mm-hmm.
because there are plenty of those.
Well, and that comes back to actually something that I want to talk about, which is because we haven't talked about it on the show. We talked a lot about addiction, but not about stages of change. I want to touch upon that. Um, but with these family members who are really defensive or blaming the addict and don't really want to own their part, don't want to be part of the solution, just take my person and send them to rehab and fix them, and I don't have to do anything. I don't have to look at my own behaviors. I don't want to stop drinking or using myself, whatever, all those things. Do you think, what are your thoughts about people with the addiction setting boundaries as well, but to maybe like not have so much involvement with their family, if the families are not supportive of their recovery, if they're not willing to participate in what's required? What do you think about addicts saying no to their family, setting boundaries, or maybe not, like it could be extreme boundaries of not having involvement if it's really toxic? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that if that's going to work for the addict to be able to get clean, to be able to do what they need to do, um, absolutely go for it. Maybe in time they'll be able to find a way to communicate with each other, but I know that that's what I had to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it would have killed me to continue having, um, and we usually, my company is called Love with Boundaries. People sometimes get it wrong and call it Love Without Boundaries. And it's love with boundaries because we need to love and we need to love with boundaries. There's no question about it. Um, we usually get phone calls from the family because we're known for working with families. We're known for having great success with the families. But every once in a while, we get a phone call from the addict who may not quite be done yet, but who's very close to being done and doesn't feel like they have their family support and they need some support, and sometimes we definitely we work with them, and sometimes we'll get them into a treatment program. Sometimes they'll just work with us depending on where they are and what they need. But um, if your family, if you're dealing with addiction and your family is not going to be helpful to you and they're not willing to look at what they've been doing at all, then get out of Dodge, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
get out and find your support somewhere else.
I'm with you 100%. I see too many clients staying in these toxic family dynamic or relationship, could be a romantic type relationship,
Yeah,
whatever it is. They stay in these dynamics out of obligation, or, they have a belief that I have to, or blood is thicker than water, or whatever it is. But if it's abusive, if it's toxic, if there's no support, that you can't heal in an environment where there isn't that kind of care and support and love, right? Like
Right.
people don't heal in that. People stay sick in that. It's probably part of the reason why they're, using the addictive behavior in the first place, is to cope with a
Exactly.
unhealthy family system, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with me and my story, um, I was already smoking pot before I had Crohn's and before I was given all that medication. So I was I had already found a way to get myself away from the pain of what I'd been through in my family. I had already found that. Um, and addicts will find a way to not have to feel what they're feeling if it's really uncomfortable for them. Who wouldn't? In a way, addiction is something that's it's almost a good thing for a person, but it isn't because it bites them on the butt. So before it bites them on the butt, it's been good for them, you know.
My good friend and colleague TJ Woodward, who we've had on the show before, in his book Conscious Recovery, he calls it a brilliant strategy. Addiction is a brilliant strategy.
Yeah,
It works. It does
until
something
it isn't.
until it
Yeah,
doesn't, and it stops being so brilliant. Right,
right,
exactly. Yeah.
right.
And I love looking at it that way, because a lot of people too, they will demonize the drugs and alcohol. It's because of this, or it's the pharma, big pharma's fault. And, sure, there's, by all means, they're not,
A lot of people play a part in
a lot of
this.
people play a part in it. And yet, it isn't just about that, right? We have to look at the bigger picture.
It A lot of people play a part, but it's the addict's choice about whether they use the behavior or the substance. It's always, always, always the addict's choice. It's not the parent's choice. It's not the family's choice. Nobody can make that choice for an addict, but you can do some things differently as a family member to help the addict get there faster. And that's what you want to do. You want to say, we love you. We want to help you get there faster.
Right. So I do want to come back to this, because I think it would be educational for our audience. I don't know if the lay person audience often has heard of this terminology of the trans theoretical model of change, um, the Prochaska and De Clementi. It's something that we that work in treatment have all learned about, and it very much, motivational interviewing is the style of counseling that many of us use in addiction treatment because of this very thing that we're talking about. A person has to a person will move through different stages of change. They don't just suddenly go from being an addict to being a sober person. It's a whole process. Do you want to comment on any of that?
That's for sure. Yeah. Um, I mean, you sort of get close to maybe I'm ready. Maybe I'm sort of kind of maybe ready. And you start reaching out for help. And then when you've gotten some help, you're a little bit more ready to do some other things that might be critical to the process. I keep my language really simple for people. I don't talk about theory. You know, um, I try to meet the client where they are, and most of them aren't at that series of change. But
Preparation and action stages of change. Right.
right, right. But you know, I I can remember walking down the street with a friend from Narcotics Anonymous, and I remember saying to her, I was I was in my first year of recovery, and I remember saying to her, I feel like I'm stoned.
Mm-hmm.
And what I didn't understand was that the pot was still in my fat cells. I didn't know that. Nobody told me that the pot was still going to be in my fat cells. So I had lost a little weight, and the pot was coming up out of my fat cells, and I was feeling like I was stoned, you know? So I was at that point in my first year of recovery. In my second year of recovery, I might have known my own name,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And in the third year of recovery, I definitely knew my own name. And in the fifth year of recovery, this was happening. And then in the seventh year, that was happening. And it's all, I'm still dealing with stuff in my life at 38 years clean and sober. I still have stuff that's come up. I'm not a perfect person. I haven't worked everything out. You know, I'm I'm still where I am in my recovery.
Right. It's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. And when I can help a family see that, that there are going to be times when you feel really good about what you're doing and you feel your self-respect and you feel so good, and the addict is actually making noises that they might be ready for something different, and then the next day they can wake up and, oh God, everything's awful again.
That was the point I wanted to make with this, is that people don't quite understand, I think, and especially family members often don't understand how the process of change is not necessarily a linear one, point A to point Z. It goes back and forth and up and down and all around. And this model of change, what I like about it is it speaks to that. The person in pre-contemplation doesn't even think they have a problem. Everyone else around them might see that they do. That's not the person that you're going to get into treatment. That person may not, unless they're like coerced by the law or something, they're unlikely to want to make a change. The person in contemplation is really a good one for you to meet where they're at, because they're iffy. Part of them wants to make the change, part of them doesn't want to make the change. They're scared. Who would I be if I let go of my brilliant strategy of my addiction, right? What would happen to all my friends that I party with, right?
Yeah. And it's just as scary, talking about fear, it's just as scary for the addict to be thinking, who am I without this brilliant strategy, whatever that is? It's just as scary for the addict as it is for the family member to say, you want me to stop enabling? You want me to stop doing his laundry? What if he gets angry with me? And they're scared of that, and everybody's scared, and things have to change. They have to change even when you're scared. There's a great book that was written quite a long time ago, but it's one of those evergreen. It's like mine. It's an evergreen book. It's going to be around for a while. It's called "Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway."
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Susan Jeffries, I think her name is, um, and I mean the title just says it all. Feel the fear, know that you feel the fear. It's okay that you feel that. It makes sense that you feel that. Of course, you would feel that. And we have to do it anyway, because it's not going to work if we don't.
It doesn't, and I think this perspective also informs us as therapists, counselors who work with clients and families with addiction, because the families can also be in a different stage of change than the client. Families might be ready for things to change, the addict isn't, right? Or
Usually,
vice versa,
usually that's how it goes.
right?
The
and
family's ready for change, the addict isn't. No, don't make me. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, but we need to tailor our approach to that. That's the thing, because I think too many people think there's one cookie cutter formula. And
No.
if you just apply the one cookie cutter formula, you go to rehab for 28 days, if you can even get that
Oh,
paid.
which is way
But
too short. Way
right,
too short.
go
Yeah.
to rehab and get fixed, and then do AA or NA, and that's it. That's the cookie cutter formula, and it doesn't work
Yeah.
like that, and especially not if someone is ambivalent about changing, or the family is ambivalent about making changes. That really, then we need to meet them differently. Like you said, we
That's
need
right.
to.
And that's what counseling is about. That's what counseling is about to me, is helping somebody get to know themselves on a different level, on a deeper level. What's really going on here?
Yes, Exactly. And to also like play the tape through, right? We use that expression often, is looking at, if you continue down this trajectory, really, where is that going to leave you? You know, what
Yeah.
would it be like to lose your family, to lose your home, to lose, like, have you really like sat with that and considered what that might be like? Because often people are not thinking of the consequence. The addict often is not thinking of the consequences. And so I think like working in that it's empathic, it's non-confrontational, you know, it's an approach that even research has shown tends to work better in working with addicted family systems and clients, you know, the addict themselves, is much more effective. But I want to shift gears.
And if I can just say also that, it's the same for the family. The family has to look at, what would it be like to lose your addict? What would it be like to be at that funeral? What would it be like to think, could I have done something?
Right. Absolutely.
And so everybody's got to look at that. The addict has to look at, well, how self-absorbed have I been, and could I lose my family over this? And too many people are still dying of addiction. And so the family needs to look at, if I don't change something with my addict, what could happen?
Exactly. Because people aren't, and it is happening, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, you had mentioned a few moments ago your book, and I would love to hear more about what you've done. I know you have a few different things you're in the process of or have already created.
Yes, I'm I'm the author of three books, and I've co-authored three more books. Um, and This one and the workbook that goes with it have won awards, which just, if I
Can
can
you
just
read that out
say,
loud, the title, please? Because for those who
yeah,
are just listening and not watching.
I will. I will. I was just going to say that, you know, for me to have won awards, I mean, I was an addict. Addicts don't win awards, right? So people can change, and it's a wonderful feeling. Um, so my book is called Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself: The Top 10 Survival Tips for Loving Someone with an Addiction. And I wrote this book in 2009. It was published in 2010, I think. Uh, I made sure that it's a simple read, um, especially for people who um, don't have English as their first language. And this book has been translated into several languages now. Um, so it's had quite a lot of success. And I think, for some people have said that it sounds like it's like a parenting book with addiction in it, right? But it's not just about addiction, but it's about setting boundaries. It's about caring about yourself. It's about taking care of yourself. It's about, you know, whether you have addiction or not, but definitely it's about addiction if you have that in your family.
Mhm. I love that. And then you said there was a workbook that goes with it as well.
There's a workbook that goes with it. I have to, yeah, here it is. Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself, the workbook. um, it goes with it, and I love this picture
Yeah.
of the hands that are chained, and out of that comes a butterfly.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And you also have courses, like an online course that you're working on.
Yeah, I have an online course that's almost finished, um, for people who, maybe can't afford counseling or don't want to do counseling, but they can work at their own pace with, um, and I would think that some of them will start the online program and also think, well, maybe I need some counseling with this too. But it's for the families. It's not for the addicts. And my book, The Loving an Addict, Loving Yourself, that is not for the addict. Please don't give it to the addict and think it's going to fix the addict. The addict will hate it, will hate this book
Okay.
because it's all about setting boundaries with an
With
addict.
them, calling
And
them on their stuff.
addicts, the word that addicts hate the most is no.
Yes, of course.
So don't try to fix your addict that way. And we also have a group that we're starting very soon. Um, it's about the 16 steps, which isn't the 12 steps and 4 more. That's not the 16 steps. The 16 steps is a whole different set of steps. It was written by Charlotte Castle, who just changed the 12 steps into these steps that are much more inclusive, much more spiritual, not religious, but spiritual. It's the 16 steps are wonderful. And if you don't know what they are, you can look on my website and find them, and you'll see the difference between these and the 12 steps. So this group is for women who are loved ones of addicts and who would like to be in a community of other women who are doing the same work and do it
Fabulous.
as a group. Yeah.
Yes, the group work is so important, and I think, I mean, we obviously know that for the addict, the group work is very powerful and important, but
Yeah.
also for families to know to talk to other families, to hear that they're not alone, to know that the challenges are shared and they can learn from each other and support one another. Like
Yeah.
all of that is really important.
So many people are on their own and don't realize what you've just said. That there are other people, family members think, oh, nobody's going to understand what I go through. There are so many families who understand exactly what you're going through. Yeah.
Yes. So I love all that. And you mentioned your website. So what is the name of your
The
website?
the website is called Love with Boundaries, all one word, lovewithboundaries.com. And you can see all the different things that we offer, who's on our team, what we give to you, what we offer you.
Love it. Any final thoughts for us today? This has been such an enriching conversation. Thank you so much.
I think the thing that I would say is never give up. If you're a family member, there are things you can do that will help the situation, really, that really will help this situation. Please don't give up. If you give up, your addict runs the risk of dying out there or dying in your home. He doesn't have to be homeless to pass away from drugs. He can do it right in your house. Don't give up. Don't give up. We know you love your addict. We know even when you hate your addict, when you feel, I wish he would die, when you still love him or her. You love them. And so don't give up on them. Don't give up on yourself.
Thank you so much, Candace, for sharing your wisdom and your
Thank you.
experience with us. For the audience, if you've liked this podcast and you find the information helpful, please pass it along to whomever might be in need of it. Share it, subscribe, like it, review it, all the things that will get this information out there in the hands of more people. And yes, thanks again, Candace. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Kaleidoscope of Possibilities.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Kaleidoscope of Possibilities, Alternative Perspectives on Mental Health. This has been Dr. Adriana Popescu. If you enjoyed this episode, please like and subscribe and share with others. To find out more about me, my guests, and more, please visit my website at adrianapopescu.org. See you next time!